everybody. Okay, so I'm going to be doing chapters 50 through 54. This will be chapter 50. I will then jump ahead of Pride and Prejudice. It was great talking to you guys this morning. Miss ya. I won't go into that because, let's just keep going. Number 1, what did Mr. Bennet very often wish? He wishes that he hadn't spent his entire income. He wishes that he had saved some of it to make better provisions for his children and his wife if they survived him. But it was too late for that now. He had nothing else to do, so too late. Number 2, why was economy perfectly useless in the beginning of the marriage? Well, because in the beginning of the marriage, he was planning on having a son. So there was no reason to prepare to not have a son. Number 3, why did he not send a message to Lydia? Because he was so mad. He was so angry with her and for the way that she behaved that he definitely could not write her a letter at this point. Number 4, how long did Mrs. Bennet remain upstairs? She remained upstairs for a fortnight, which is 14 days. Very good. Not for 4 nights, but for a fortnight. Number 5, what had been the first object of Mrs. Bennet's wishes? Mrs. Bennet's wishes had always, the first order of business had always been the marriage of her daughter. She always wanted one of her girls to get married. Number 6, why did Mr. Bennet, quote, allow his wife to talk without interruption while the servants remained? Well, he did this because he didn't want to make a scene. He waited until the servants left, and then as soon as they left, he basically laid down the law. And he said, woman, Mrs. Bennet, before you take any or all of these houses for your son, and it wasn't her son-in-law. He was considered a son because he had married one of her daughters, so he was now a son. Let us come to a right understanding. Into one house they will never be admitted, and that is Longbourn. So he's basically saying, you can let them visit wherever you want, but they are never allowed inside this home. That's how angry Mr. Bennet was. And you're thinking, but he allowed him to come in, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. Number 7, what did Mrs. Bennet find with amazement and horror? And why was this ironic? That she was disgusted and horrified that Mr. Bennet refused to forward money to Lydia so that Lydia can purchase a trousseau. A trousseau is a wedding clothes. It's kind of like when a woman gets married back in this day, she truly was leaving her youth and her innocence, and she was moving into marriage and adulthood. And so it was the idea that a woman needed to get a whole new wardrobe because she was no longer going to dress as a little girl. She was now going to dress as a woman and become a woman. So a trousseau would have been purchased by all women of wealth or women within a certain range of society. So Mrs. Bennet is shocked that Mr. Bennet is refusing to allow Lydia to purchase a trousseau to show that she is now a woman. It's referred to as wedding clothes sometimes, but it's a trousseau. It's the French term for it. I can say that in French, and I can say bonjour, because I've watched Beauty and the Beast. I can say it a lot. Bonjour, 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 boop. There goes the baker with, okay, let's just get back to work here. She was horrified, and it was ironic because now all of a sudden she is celebrating Lydia getting married. And it's, oh, this wonderful thing. It's what I've always wanted forever and ever. Where before she was like, oh, that Wickham, he's such a jerk. And she and Mrs. Phillips were going on and on about how they always knew that Mr. Wickham was a bad guy. Well, now she's singing the praises of Mr. Wickham. Wow, she's quite a character, isn't she? Let's look at question number 8. What did Elizabeth now begin to comprehend about Mr. Darcy? She now began to comprehend that he was exactly the man who in disposition and talents would most suit her. So she realized that he was the perfect guy for her, but it was too late. Number 9, explain the following quotation and tell me who said it. But how little of permanent happiness could belong to a couple who were only brought together because their passions were stronger than their virtue, she could easily conjecture. And that was said by Elizabeth, or thought of by Elizabeth, basically. And she's just lamenting the life that her sister has inadvertently chosen because Lydia is such a fool. She is a stupid little girl that is just excited about the most mundane, idiotic things. And so Elizabeth feels sadness for her sister, like, you trapped yourself. You have no out. You are stuck with this man who's going to treat you like garbage, and your life is going to be miserable. You think it's going to be fantastic. You think it's going to be amazing, but it's not. And so it's a very, very sad thing that you couldn't control your passion, your hormones, control your hormones, and now your hormones have trapped you. Let's look at number 10. What were some of the advantages Mr. Bennet and his daughter saw in Wickham's removal from the Shire? They were very pleased because he would leave them alone. He would stay away from them, and they wouldn't have to, in a sense, be reminded daily of the degradation that he's brought upon their family. Number 11. Why did Mr. Bennet finally allow Wickham and Lydia to come visit Longbourn? This is important because when I first read this book, I understood it, but I didn't really get it. And the whole reason that he finally allowed them to come was, number one, because Jane and Elizabeth convinced him. But the purpose that they convinced him for was what was the most significant. They convinced him to allow Lydia and Wickham to come because if Lydia and Wickham were not invited, then it would be very obvious to everyone outside of their family that Lydia had brought shame. If the family played along with it and, oh yeah, she did something stupid, but we love her, everything's great, then the family wouldn't fall so low in the eyes of society. So Jane and Elizabeth were really trying to convince Mr. Bennet, hey, you've got to let her come and visit. Even though we don't really want to see them, you've got to let them come and visit, because otherwise it's going to be worse for us as girls trying to find good matches, because now Elizabeth has no hope of Mr. Darcy coming back into her life at all. But hopefully she could at least get, I don't know, a butcher or a baker, maybe a candlestick maker. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of chapter 11. Chapter 50, of Pride and Prejudice. I will go ahead and upload this. And sorry it took me so long to get these, but love you guys. Bye.